Hello. Today General Hospital Willow Tate's transformation into someone unrecognizable began after the devastating loss of custody of her children to Michael Corinthos. The emotional blow shattered her, and what followed was a slow descent into darkness, where her actions and psyche twisted in ways even she couldn't control. It's hard to fathom how a loving mother, once devoted to her children, could spiral into a series of decisions that were manipulative, deceitful, and, at times, outright dangerous. Yet, that's exactly what happened when the heartache of losing her children became too overwhelming to bear. The heart-wrenching day she lost custody marked the turning point for Willow. Her entire world seemed to collapse in an instant, leaving her struggling to piece together what was left of her identity. From that moment forward, a veil of darkness began to descend upon her mind. The woman who had once been so focused on her family, undoing right by her children, was now someone entirely different. Gone was the hopeful, gentle soul that had believed in the goodness of people. Instead, a bitter, vengeful version of Willow began to take shape, her actions clouded by desperation and anger. The first signs of this shift came when Willow began to manipulate those closest to her. Sasha Corbin, her once trusted confidant and best friend, quickly became the target of Willow's growing need for control. Sasha had always been a grounding force for Willow, offering emotional support through every trial and triumph. But Willow's desperation and pain led her down a dangerous path, and she began to use their friendship as a pawn in her own personal game. Willow's growing bitterness and desire for revenge took hold, turning her into someone capable of bending others to her will whether they liked it or not. Sasha, unaware of the transformation taking place in her friend, found herself caught in the whirlwind of Willow's actions. Their relationship became strained, as Willow's increasingly erratic behavior put Sasha on edge. There were moments when Sasha couldn't help but feel that something was terribly wrong, but her loyalty to Willow kept her by her side. That is, until it became too dangerous. Sasha, who had always been fiercely protective of her own family, particularly her newborn child, could no longer ignore the growing threat posed by Willow's unpredictable nature. With a heavy heart, she made the painful decision to leave Port Charles, fearing for her safety and the safety of her child. She couldn't shake the feeling that Willow, in her current state, was capable of anything. Willow's descent into this manipulative and destructive state was driven by more than just losing custody. It was the culmination of months of emotional turmoil, of losing the one thing that meant everything to her children. The heartbreak was almost unbearable, and instead of processing her grief in a healthy way, Willow let it fester and take root in her soul. The love she once had for her children transformed into an obsessive, consuming need to reclaim them at any cost. She couldn't accept that her own actions had led to this loss. Instead, she rationalized it as Michael's fault, and she became fixated on destroying him as a way to regain control over her life and her children. But there was more to this situation than just grief. Willow's emotional devastation was compounded by betrayal. Drew Kane, the man she had once loved and trusted, became the catalyst for her downward spiral. Their affair, which had already strained her marriage to Michael, was the emotional betrayal she could never fully recover from. Willow's heartbreak deepened when she discovered that Drew had been involved with her own mother, Nina Reeves, at the same time he was pursuing her. This revelation shattered Willow to her core, as she realized that the man she had placed so much hope in had betrayed her in the most intimate way possible. Drew's involvement with Nina, the woman who had been the source of so much conflict in her life, felt like the ultimate betrayal, a final wound that she couldn't heal from. In the wake of this discovery, Willow did the unthinkable: cut Drew and Nina out of her life entirely. She left him at the altar, humiliated and heartbroken, believing that this was the only way to regain some semblance of control over her life. But while she could walk away from Drew, she couldn't escape the emptiness and unresolved feelings that lingered. And despite her best efforts, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Drew had been her anchor for so long, and now, with him gone, she felt adrift. The pain of betrayal and loss consumed her, and she found herself unable to break free from the cycle of despair. Now, as Willow continues to spiral further, she begins to entertain an even darker thought tone that could alter the course of her life forever. In her fragile state of mind, she starts to entertain the idea of eliminating Drew and framing Michael for the crime. If she could make Drew disappear and ensure Michael's imprisonment, she could regain control over her children once again. It's a chilling thought, one that shows just how far Willow has fallen from the woman she once was. The question remains, will Willow go through with it? Can she really bring herself to murder the man she once loved in order to reclaim the children she lost? Or will the consequences of her actions catch up with her before she can carry out her twisted plan? As Willow's descent into darkness continues, the lines between right and wrong blur beyond recognition. The woman who once cared so deeply for her family now seems consumed by her own destructive impulses. Whether or not she follows through with her plans remains to be seen, but one thing is certain, the Willow Tate everyone once knew is no longer the same person. And Port Charles will never be the same again. Willow Tate's love for Drew Kane became the central focus of her life in a way that eclipsed everything else, including her family. It started as a passionate affair, a secret that she knew could ruin her life if discovered. But despite the risks, Willow was consumed by her feelings for Drew, abandoning the structure and stability that her family had provided. Her heart and mind were drawn toward him, and the consequences of her actions barely registered as she became more and more lost in the depths of this forbidden relationship. She had always believed in the idea of true love, that one person could come into her life and be the salvation she so desperately needed. Drew, with his charm, empathy, and shared pain from his past, became the embodiment of this hope. In his eyes, Willow saw a chance for something better, something that could mend the pieces of her broken life. She felt that Drew was the key to her happiness, and that if she could have him in her life, she could reclaim the joy she had lost when her marriage to Michael Corinthos began to crumble. However, the more Willow's obsession with Drew grew, the more she sacrificed, including her children and her own integrity. It became increasingly clear that this love, while intensely real for her, was also an unhealthy fixation. Willow's emotional turmoil blinded her to the consequences, as she chose Drew over her family. She chose him over her children's well-being, over her marriage, and even over her own self-respect. In her heart, she justified it all by telling herself that Drew would be the one to save her, that his love would somehow heal the rift between her and Michael, and that, in the end, it would all be worth it. She couldn't see the danger of pursuing a relationship that was not only damaging to herself but to everyone around her. But Willow's fairy tale romance was built on lies and deceit, and it didn't take long for the truth to come crashing down. The devastating revelation that Drew had been secretly involved with Nina Reeves, Willow's own mother, shattered her world. She had placed her trust in Drew, believing him to be her rock, the man who would help her rebuild her life. Instead, she found herself facing the ultimate betrayal. Drew, the man she thought would be the father of her children and her future, had betrayed her in the worst way possible. He had not only hurt her by being with Nina, but he had also torn apart the very foundation of Willow's identity. The woman she trusted most, her own mother, had been sleeping with the man Willow thought she could depend on. The impact of this betrayal on Willow was catastrophic. Her entire sense of self, her relationship with Drew, and even her sense of who she was as a mother and a woman, crumbled in that moment. She couldn't accept what had happened. How could the two people she had trusted most hurt her in this way? The pain was so intense that she made the decision to sever ties with both Drew and Nina completely. In one emotional outburst, she kicked them both out of her life. But even as her rage and heartbreak pushed her to take that drastic step, she knew, deep down, that she hadn't fully severed her connection to Drew. Despite all the anger and resentment that had built up inside her, a small part of Willow still yearned for him. The love she felt for Drew wasn't something that could simply be erased. He had been her escape from the pain of her life, and his absence left a void in her heart that she couldn't ignore. Willow tried to convince herself that it was over, that she had done the right thing by cutting him off, but the truth was that she couldn't forget him. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that if she ever hoped to regain custody of her children, if she ever wanted to fix the mess her life had become, she would have to make peace with Drew. Her longing for Drew, mixed with her overwhelming desire to fix her broken family, led her to entertain the idea of reconciling with him, even though the thought of doing so repulsed her. Could she really set aside the betrayal she had suffered in order to work together with Drew again? It seemed impossible, yet as time passed, the pull of her desire to restore her life grew stronger. She understood that if she wanted to get her children back, she might have to make compromises and mend relationships that had been shattered. Drew, despite everything that had happened, was still a key player in her pursuit of a future with her children. This internal conflict consumed Willow. She was torn between the woman who had been devastated by Drew's betrayal and the mother who was willing to do anything to regain the children she had lost. The feelings of love for Drew, which had once been a source of joy, had now become a reminder of her own vulnerability and the depths to which she had fallen. It became clear that she would have to face the harsh reality of her situation, the path she had chosen, the love she had clung to, and the people she had hurt along the way. Willow's journey had led her to a crossroads, and the next decision she made could change everything. Would she be able to forgive Drew for his betrayal and work together to heal the wounds of the past, or would she push him away completely, forever? Could she overcome the emotional scars that had been left by his actions and truly rebuild her life? These were questions that Willow would have to answer, but no matter what, the love she once felt for Drew would always remain a complicated and painful part of her journey. As the days turned into weeks, Willow Tate's emotional and mental state continued to deteriorate. The heavy burden of losing her children and the crushing sense of betrayal that had followed Drew Kane's actions weighed so heavily on her that she could scarcely function. She had once been a woman of warmth, compassion, and fierce love for her family, but now she was a shell of that person, consumed by grief, anger, and the relentless desire to reclaim control over the life she had lost. Her thoughts, once filled with hope and dreams for a brighter future with Drew, had turned dark and twisted. Her deep love for him, once pure and unwavering, had transformed into a toxic obsession. She couldn't shake the memory of the man she had believed would be her salvation, and now, in the face of the ultimate betrayal, she had to wrestle with a new, dangerous reality. Drew had slept with her own mother, Nina Reeves, at a time when she had trusted him most, and this revelation shattered Willow to her core. The person she had given her heart to, the man who was supposed to build a future with her, had chosen to betray her in the most intimate way possible. The shame and anger that followed left Willow feeling as though her world had completely unraveled. But the betrayal was not just a personal wound, it was a blow that threatened to tear apart everything she had worked for. In Willow's mind, Drew's affair with Nina wasn't just a betrayal of their relationship, it was a betrayal of the very dream she had built her life around. She had envisioned a family with Drew, a future where her children would grow up in a loving, stable home. Now, that dream was in shambles, and no matter how hard she tried to pick up the pieces, it felt like everything was slipping through her fingers. The more Willow thought about it, the more she began to see Drew not as the man she had once loved, but as an obstacle symbol of everything that had gone wrong in her life. She had believed that he would be her partner, that together they would overcome the hardships life had thrown their way. Instead, he had become a part of the very problem she was now facing. He was the reason she had lost her children. He was the reason she was now isolated, alone in her pain, and disconnected from the family she had once cherished. The more she thought about it, the more her mind twisted and warped the situation, until she realized that in order to regain control of her life, she needed to remove him from the equation completely. The idea began to take root in her mind: if Drew were out of the picture, and if she could somehow manipulate the situation to frame Michael for the crime, everything would be set right again. The thought of Drew's disappearance became a lifeline to Willow, the only escape from the nightmare she had found herself trapped in. She would no longer have to face the man who had shattered her heart, and the obstacle of Michael would be eliminated as well. Michael, who had taken her children away from her, would be locked behind bars, paying for the crime she believed he had committed against her. The more Willow thought about her plan, the more it began to consume her. She meticulously mapped out every detail in her mind, constructing a strategy so cunning and calculated that it almost felt like the only logical course of action. Drew's death would not only rid her of the man who had betrayed her, it would also clear the way for her to reclaim her children. With Michael in prison and Drew gone, she would finally be able to take back control of her life. The thoughts of what her life would look like once she had her children back, once she had won this battle, filled her with a sense of cold satisfaction. But as the plan started to take shape, Willow began to feel the weight of the consequences that she was about to unleash. She had always prided herself on her ability to love deeply and fiercely, but now, as she concocted this twisted plot, she found herself questioning whether she was even capable of love anymore. Could the woman who once held her children close and made sure they felt safe and loved truly become a person capable of murder? Could she take the life of the man who had once made her feel so cherished, no matter how deep her pain ran? Despite the doubts that flickered in her mind, Willow's desperation to get her children back drowned out the voice of reason. The rage she felt toward Michael, the man who had betrayed her and taken her children, blinded her to the true cost of her actions. She was willing to do anything to win back what had been stolen from her. And if that meant taking Drew's life and framing Michael for it, then so be it. There was a dark sense of satisfaction in her plotting. Willow had been a victim for so long, victimized by her own choices, by Drew's betrayal, and by Michael's actions. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control, like she could finally take back what had been taken from her. The idea of framing Michael for Drew's murder, of watching him rot in prison while she reclaimed her children, gave her a sense of power she had long been deprived of. But there was a gnawing feeling inside her, a voice that whispered that no matter how much she wanted this, the cost would be too great. Even if she succeeded in executing her plan, what would be left of her? Could she live with herself after taking Drew's life? What would she become if she crossed that line? Willow could hardly look at herself in the mirror anymore. The person staring back at her was no longer the woman who had cared so deeply for her children, for Drew, for the family she had once dreamed of. She was someone else entirely, who was willing to sacrifice everything, even her own humanity, to reclaim what she believed was hers. The thought of carrying out the plan, of taking Drew's life, still sent a chill down her spine. But the desire to make everything right again, to fix the broken pieces of her life, pushed her forward. Willow knew that once she crossed this line, there would be no turning back. Would she be able to live with the consequences of her actions, or would she become consumed by guilt and regret? Could she truly go through with it, or would she crumble under the weight of what she was about to do? The clock was ticking, and Willow's decision loomed closer. The question at the heart of Willow Tate's internal struggle is whether she is truly capable of murder. In the depths of her desperation to reclaim her children, could she really cross that line? Could she, once a loving mother, become a cold and calculating individual capable of taking another life to secure her own desires? As the stakes grow higher and higher, Willow's once steady moral compass begins to crumble under the weight of her obsession with regaining control over her life. Willow's internal conflict is palpable, her every thought a tug-of-war between the woman she used to be and the woman she's becoming. She is a mother who has lost everything, and in her mind, the only way to take back what she's lost is through extreme measures. The pain of losing her children to Michael Corinthos has pushed her to a breaking point where nothing seems too extreme, and no action too unforgivable. But within her, there's still a flicker of the woman who once valued family above all else, the mother who adored her children and placed them at the center of her world. That woman is still there, but her presence is now overshadowed by the monstrous ambition and the cold vengeance that have taken root in Willow's heart. Willow's strategy to eliminate Drew and frame Michael for his murder may seem like the only path forward, but with each passing day, the psychological toll is mounting. While her mind spins with plans, her heart is torn. Can she truly live with herself if she goes through with it? Would the victory of regaining her children be worth the soul-crushing consequences of becoming a murderer? The cost of her decision, both to her soul and to her future, grows clearer with every moment. But still, the temptation to execute her plan overpowers her better judgment. It's one thing to entertain the thought of revenge, it's another to actually take the final step into the abyss. Willow wrestles with this truth, that the longer she stays on this path, the more she loses herself. The person she once was, woman who cherished family, loved deeply, and was willing to do anything to protect her children, has been slowly eroded by the darker forces within her. If she takes Drew's life and destroys Michael's future, she will have crossed an irreversible line, and the consequences may be too steep to bear. Willow can feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her, the heavy burden of knowing that one action could change her life forever. But in her twisted mind, it all feels just to feed her children, her future, her happiness are all on the line. And if Drew is gone, and if Michael is locked away, then she would be free to build the life she always dreamed of, with her children by her side. Yet even as she plans for that future, she knows that nothing comes without a price, and she wonders, in the deepest part of her soul, whether the cost will be too high. Port Charles, a city known for its deception, betrayal, and dark decisions, is the perfect backdrop for Willow's spiral into darkness. The city is filled with people who've crossed lines, made deals with the devil, and taken steps that they could never undo. But even in a place like Port Charles, there's a boundary line that, once crossed, might forever change who a person is. Willow finds herself at the edge of that line, teetering between her desire for revenge and the realization that taking the life of another person would forever alter the woman she has always been. She is no longer just a mother grieving the loss of her children. She has transformed into something far more dangerous. Her obsession has turned her into a person willing to destroy anyone in her path, including those she once loved. The woman who was once capable of tenderness and love is now a woman driven by dark ambition, fueled by the desperate hope that reclaiming her children will fix everything. But will it? Her plot to murder Drew and frame Michael is not just an attempt at reclaiming her children, it is an attempt to reassert control over a life that has spiraled out of her hands. Willow, in her mind, is justifying her actions as a means of survival. But there is a dangerous flaw in her reasoning. She has become so consumed by her need for revenge and her obsession with regaining control that she can no longer see the full picture. In her pursuit of what she believes is justice, Willow may be unknowingly walking toward her own undoing. The consequences of her actions loom large, and the question of whether she will succeed in her dark plan, or whether it will backfire, is the core of this narrative. If Willow does go through with her plot, there is no telling what kind of psychological toll it will take on her. The guilt, the fear, and the irreversible consequences of such a drastic decision could destroy her in ways she doesn't even realize. However, even if she fails, the emotional damage will be irreversible. Willow's relationship with her children, her connection to those she once loved, will never be the same. The person she once was, loving mother, the caring partner, will be lost, replaced by a shell of who she was, forever scarred by the choices she made in pursuit of revenge. The bitter truth is that no matter the outcome, Willow's life will never return to what it once was. As the story unfolds, fans will be left on the edge of their seats, wondering how far Willow will go in her quest for vengeance. Will she actually follow through with her deadly plan? Will she be able to reconcile the darkness she has embraced with the remnants of the person she used to be? Or will she crumble under the weight of her own actions, leading to a tragic end she can never escape from? Willow's fate remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the consequences of her choices will echo far beyond what she can imagine. The people of Port Charles may never be the same, and neither will Willow Tate. The journey ahead is fraught with danger, deceit, and moral compromise. And as Willow takes each step forward, she will have to confront the price of her own choices that may lead her to a tragic end that no one, not even she, could have foreseen. The question that remains is not just whether her plan will succeed, but whether she will survive the emotional and psychological devastation that comes with crossing the ultimate line.